Hey everyone, I'm Andy Petronic, and this is the Whole Life Challenge podcast. It's the place we connect with extraordinary people, ones who think differently, who have risen to the top of their field, who have vast knowledge, experience, and insights to share, as well as incredible stories to tell. They are also the ones who have figured out a way to take their life's experience and turn it into something that truly makes a difference in the world for others. These are their stories. Hey gang, it's Andy Petronic, and welcome back to the Whole Life Podcast. This is episode number 124. I'm really excited. I got a great lineup of guests I want to tell you about. Today, we're talking with Jill Miller. I'll tell you a little bit more about her in a second. Next week, we've got Dr. Jason Fung. He is a very well-known nephrologist, which is a kidney doctor. He's the author of a book called The Obesity Code, which is a best-selling book, and it's really fantastic. It's the only book really that I know of its kind that connects the dots between what to eat and when to eat, and it's really counter to what you think you know about, especially about the when to eat. He's also an intermittent fasting expert. And then after that, I've got Drew Logan, who's the New York Times bestselling author of a book called 25 Days. He's the only person in the world to die 3 times in one night. His heart stopped on 3 separate occasions in one period, like a 2-hour period. Fortunately, he was in the hospital at the time of the second and third, but really fascinating story, and it's kind of a phenomenal his book and his message. He's a motivational speaker, and he's really, really awesome. And then after that, I've got Steven Sashin, who is a entrepreneur. He's the founder of a company called Zero Shoes, which are my new favorite shoes, and he's a barefoot running expert. And we have a really fascinating conversation about shoes and training and all kinds of stuff related to running and walking and development of shoes and whatnot. So it's really, really cool. So I wanted to give you that preview of what's to come. But today, my conversation is with Jill Miller. You may recognize her name from the Whole Life Challenge blog. She's been her company, both Yoga Tune-Up and Tune-Up Fitness she's partnered with us and provided us mobility videos for the past, this will be the second challenge. In the fall challenge, she was on her first time through. And she's really an incredible kind of world-renowned teacher of mobility, yoga, positioning, biomechanics. She did a lot of work with Kelly Starrett and the Mobility WOD. In fact, her first book she wrote with Kelly. And let's see, what else can I tell you about Jill? And this is really a chance to get to know her better. First of all, you should check out her videos if you haven't, because I guarantee you'll learn something new that you haven't learned before. In spite of how much experience you've got in whatever you think you've got experience in, I've got 25 years of experience, and I learned quite a lot of new things from Jill through the mobility videos that she does exclusively for the Whole Life Challenge. She just had hip replacement surgery. So we talk about that. We talk about the approach that the doctor used, and it enabled her to actually walk out of the hospital, which never happens in hip surgeries. We have quite a long conversation about her struggle over the years with bulimia. And she really opens up about her struggle with eating disorders. She gives some really great advice for parents of kids with eating disorders and for kids who are struggling with eating and getting control over themselves around what they eat. So, she very heartfelt part of the conversation. We talked about her growth of Yoga Tune-Up and how that came to be. It was she was making a Hanukkah gift for her mom, actually, when she came up with the name Yoga Tune-Up. We talked about her biggest challenge in life. We talk about her being a mom, a new mom. And that's a good preview of what we talk about. So it's really, Jill is incredibly relatable. She's incredibly thoughtful, incredibly thorough, and very, very knowledgeable. And I guarantee you're gonna get a lot out of the conversation. So check it out. Coming up in about 2 minutes after I read the rest of my introduction. So changing gears. Let's see. Fan of the week. So if you've listened to the podcast before, you know that I choose someone to be fan of the week each week because reviews of the podcast are so valuable. They're so valuable in growing the podcast. I want more people to tune in so that I can get better and more noteworthy guests. I get more credibility with people and we get more downloads of the podcast. And then I can go to, Oprah. I'd love to have Oprah on the podcast. Anybody know Oprah and want to give me an introduction that she'd take me seriously beyond my little podcast? But yeah, people like Oprah, I would love to have on the podcast. So I say that in a laughing tone, but I'm serious. If you know Oprah and you think she'd come on the podcast, I'd love an introduction. But anyway, it's very, very helpful if you get something out of the podcast to write something in iTunes. So the best way to do that is go to this link, bit.ly/WLC-podcast and write a review. This week's fan of the week is, I get a kick out of these screen names because they're definitely, I can't really tell if there's someone's name or not. Tvolps, Tvolps, Tvolps. This is what he or she writes. Change begins here. I started listening to this podcast without even knowing what the Whole Life Challenge was. Within 2 weeks, it was my favorite podcast. I absolutely love the range of guests and hearing about their habits. I've gotten so many great tips and truths to ponder. I'm now doing the challenge, and the podcast is like having my own mentor. Plus, the host Andy has an awesome laugh that always makes me giggle even on the most blah of days. Look, thank you. First of all, thank you for writing the review. Thank you for taking the time to do that. If any of you out there know Tvolps, and or if you're listening, hit me up with email at podcast@wholelifechallenge.com, and I'll send you out a t-shirt as a very small token of my thanks. And if you want your review to be featured, you can write a review. So again, that link is bit.ly/WLC-podcast. If you happen to be listening on the podcast app on your iPhone or Android, you have to go, it's kind of hard to find how to write a review, but you go to library and then you scroll down to where it says ratings and reviews, and you got to find the little purple link that says write a review. And that's where you write the review. So, there you have that. Next little piece is the Whole Life Challenge has begun. January 20th has come, and it's rapidly going. And listen, if any of you out there in my audience want to join my team, I would love to have you on my team. I'm going to put a link in the show notes, and my team name is called Getting Out of the Comfort Zone. Now, we have a little challenge with our search. If you're a member of the challenge and you want to find a team, the easiest way to do that is to go into the join a team, and on the search bar, type in the word comfort. It will immediately bring up my team, or comfort zone, and it will immediately bring up my team. Go ahead and join it. I'd love to have you on board. I've already had a few listeners join the team, and hope to have you in the game with me. But I'd hope, even if you're not on my team, I'd love to have you in the Whole Life Challenge. So check it out. It's begun. Registration stays open till the 31st. So if you want to invite anybody after the game begins, you're welcome to do that. And as always, if you want to connect with me or hit me up with a question or whatever, podcast@wholelifechallenge.com is my email. And you can always find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. My screen name in all those places is @AndyPetronic. So let's get on with the episode, number 124, with Jill Miller. Get ready for the one, the only Jill Miller. welcome to the podcast. Jill Miller, welcome to the Whole Life Podcast.
It's great to be here, Andy. Thank you for having me. It's
so interesting. This has been with the fires last week in LA, it made it quite interesting to like fire days here. And I don't mean to make light of fires, but fire days here are like snow days on the East Coast because schools close and it's horrible and it's dangerous. Like snow days are fun for the most part, except if you're trying to get urgently to work. But, everybody's home, you're trapped, but you're not in dire straits. You're not going to lose your home. You're not going to. So a home day from snow is like, okay. But yeah, so last week was nuts.
Yeah, no, there was no recreation during the fire days because the air quality, you could feel it in your lungs, and I could see it in my kids' eyes and frankly in their little snots because there's just a lot of particulate in the air. And now that the majority of the smoke is cleared, it's time to get back outside and to do things to improve your filtration, right? Your lungs and your nasal passages are so good at that, but it makes it really difficult during those days to even want to breathe deeply. It's really scary. You feel, even though you're maybe not in harm's way, you can feel the oppressiveness of what's happening in the hills around you.
Yeah, and I was even referring just to scheduling a podcast because we got derailed.
I always go to the biology. That's my problem, Andy.
Right.
Yes.
Well, it's not a problem. That's good. But I was being more literal. The damn fires got in the way of our recording.
They did. But it's all good. We sleep trained my son this weekend, so I'm actually more rested now than I was last week. So, yes.
Wow, that's huge. Did you have a system? We followed a system called BabyWise when we did it with our son. Do you have one that you follow?
I think every generation has their sort of best practices for the sleep training. My son he should have cleared sleep, I would say, months and months ago. He's 15 months. But
right.
I think we do the Sleep Easy solution. But at this point, it was just like he's waking up once a night for his Milky Milks. And if I wanted to save my marriage, I had to get my kid to sleep through the night.
Right.
So, yeah, no, my husband and I we're just beaten to the ground. Plus, I'm healing from major surgery that happened almost 6 weeks ago. And so the fact that I got through almost 6 weeks while still feeding through the night with this kid and my total hip replacement, it just boggles my mind.
Wow. You had a total hip replacement.
Is this news to you?
Well, I think I kind of knew now that you're reminding me, but it wasn't fresh on my brain.
Yeah, it's news to me. I literally got the diagnosis in August that I had severe degeneration in my left hip. It came as a total shock. And right away, the doctor was like, when do you want to schedule? And I said, well, wow. I got something to do for whole life challenge. I got some videos.
What about for your life? Come on. Does he know what you do for a living?
I brought him my book and my therapy balls on my follow-up visit. And I said, this is such a long story, but yeah, so I brought him the role model book and the role model therapy balls, and he was so into it. He was flipping through all the pages, and his name is Dr. Jason Snibbe. He's an orthopedic surgeon, so he's really into fitness and sport, and obviously a big fan of rehab. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we definitely were a compatible doctor-patient team.
What once he knew what you did, did the conversation change? Obviously you got the surgery, so it didn't change. If it changed, it only changed a little bit. What was that conversation like? Well,
for one, just to share with your listeners, there was no further conservative treatment that could have been done on my hip. I have been doing, kind of unbeknownst to myself, conservative treatment for the last 12 years by minding my biomechanics, by doing the soft tissue work that I do with the role model, by exercising in a holistic way via my yoga tune-up program and then strength and conditioning. And I didn't, there wouldn't have been any ability for me to get injections or, Prolo or synovial enhancement or anything. But I also wasn't living in excruciating pain. So that's why I didn't even end up going to the doctor's office until the point where I was bone on bone and I had no cartilage left and covered with osteophytes, with bone spurs all over the rim, all over my femur. So what I am, I guess, most was reassured about is because I've studied medical jargon and am a really good anatomy scholar, I can understand, I can ask intelligent questions that aren't generic and general, and I can get really, really specific about, asking questions about the surgery and about rehab. And so I was able to really get all of my questions answered in a very technical way that I could then, bring into rehab with my PTs. And, I don't think most medical professionals expect you to be able to talk about fascial tissues, to be able to talk about attachment sites, to be able to talk about location or, potential locations of edema and interstitial fluid, just like terms that are, beyond the scope of a, Shape magazine, let's say.
Right.
So I think that's always exciting to be able to have that conversation. And I hope with my education and the programming that I create, I open up an ability for people to have those higher level conversations, because then you feel more knowledgeable, which is empowering. And frankly, you are more knowledgeable.
Right.
Yeah.
And did his conversation tenor change when he knew more about all that you knew? Like, how did your preparation and knowledge and all that stuff change? Did it change the protocol? Did it change anything that you did? Did it just change the conversation? And
no, I think any good physician, therapist, or trainer knows how to meet their student, their patient, their client where they're at. And so it's just a matter of that bedside manner adaptability, which to me just shows excellence in the therapeutic relationship, right? That you have as a student to teacher, coach to client, or doctor to patient. And so there's a respect for wherever you're at, and then trying to meet you there. So no, it's not like, oh, well, Jill knows how to massage herself, so I'm going to just, she's got a different protocol. Not at all. In fact, this particular total hip replacement procedure he does is called the direct superior, and it is a not well-known surgery. In fact, when I've talked about it online, I've been blogging and doing a lot of videos, and people are blown away. First of all, people are blown away that I walked out of a surgical center. This was done outpatient.
Wow.
So actually, I should backtrack. Yes, I was treated slightly differently because of my health, the health of my tissues, the health of my overall body. I was given an option to have this total hip replacement as an outpatient procedure at a surgical center rather than in a hospital. And I didn't realize until after I had the surgery how radical and unusual that is, because I literally was at the surgical center for a total of 6 hours. I checked in at 6:20. I walked out at 12:20.
Wow. With a new hip. That's not a little thing.
It's not. I have my bone too. Actually, it's in the kitchen. I have my femur, so I can show you the entire thing has been severed. I have the X-rays to show you the implant.
They saw the head of the femur off, right? And they put in a new.
Yes, and then they put in a ball,
titanium,
which is a multi-layered ball. It's a fantastic prosthesis by a company called Stryker. So it has dual mobility. It means I literally have no movement precautions. Wow. I like to, we like to say this is not your mother's hip replacement surgery. This is a new technology, and it's going to allow me to have every single functional range of motion for the rest of my life, and most likely, 99.9% not need a revision. So it's very different than hip replacements done in the past. I mean, literally in the last 5 years, technology has changed to allow some, in the past you would spend 7 days in the hospital if you had hip replacement. Yep. Most of my colleagues who I've been corresponding with are like, oh, I did 2 nights in the hospital after the hip replacement. How did you walk out is the question. And I think it's because of my surgeon's approach, which is called this direct superior approach, the health of my tissues and the health of my overall body. In fact, when I went for my follow-up and I was walking without my cane 5 days later. So I was able to walk. I used the crutches on day 1 and 1.5, and I switched to the cane by probably day 2.5. And then by day 5, I just didn't need the cane anymore. And when I went, I guess it was a 10-day follow-up, and I got my x-ray, the x-ray tech was like, so how'd you like your overnight at the surgical center or the hospital? And I was like, oh, I went home. He's like, what? You went home? So the fact that the x-ray technician had that reaction, this is going back to your question, did I get treated special? I think that I did have an exceptional prognosis for recovery. And so the outpatient was what was recommended to me by my surgeon. Right. And so I was like, great, because I'm nursing my son and I want to get home so I can nurse him. And that was my whole goal, was that I didn't want to disrupt the mother's schedule. And I was home for his 1 o'clock feed.
Wow. That's amazing. That's an amazing story.
But I tell you that, for anybody out there who is pre-surgery, I cannot emphasize enough that you really want to be training your whole body and the area that is problematic leading right up to your surgery. I mean, I worked out with weights, with lifting. I think I did deadlifts the day before my surgery to make sure that I had my motor control and as much proprioception as possible, so that I went in with strong tissues so that they could have that blood supply and more quickly repair. And I had almost no edema. I never wore compression pants afterwards. I never iced afterwards. So, the question is, how did you heal? I did use the Mark Pro Plus, and I used the Gecko units. These are great units just to stimulate blood flow and help with fluid perfusion, and they're great for minimizing swelling.
Well, I'm familiar with the Mark Pro. The Mark Pro is basically a TENS unit. I have one. I have a Mark Pro Plus, and love it. It's a little more gentle than others, and I can keep it on. That means I can just keep it on for longer. And I don't know if it's really gentler, because you can't really tell the wavelength. They all talk about the wavelength being the magic sauce that's in these things. Right. But I can keep the Mark Pro on my calf or my shoulder for 6 hours. I've never tried to go to sleep with it on. I have fallen asleep watching television with it on though. So, but yeah, I would keep it on for a long time.
I couldn't sleep with them. I tried, and it was too annoying. Yeah. But
what's the Gecko? Is that another type of device like that?
Yes. So it is a I'm forgetting the term now. A lot of my short-term memory files are gone from the surgery still.
They didn't tell you that they removed those too?
I think it happens with the anesthetic. It actually happens with the anesthetic.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it shuts down some of your memory files. They'll come back eventually, but it's like childbirth. You're like, I don't remember. I thought I had a good time during childbirth.
Well, that's on purpose, right?
Yes, anesthesia works.
You do not want to remember that.
But the Gecko actually stimulates the peroneal nerve. I can't remember the term used for the actual, the medical term for it, but it just wraps around your lower leg. It's a very, very simple device to wear. And they also have an over-the-counter version called the Firefly. And so it stimulates the peroneal nerve, and it helps to improve blood flow from the lower leg north. And at rest, it recirculates, I think, somewhat like 70 to 74% of the amount of blood flow you would get with walking. It can stimulate when you're just laying down. So people who are at risk of thrombosis or blood clots, this is great. But also, if you just need the circulation to help continue to keep fresh blood moving, and you're too exhausted or in pain.
I mean, that's really the mother lode of recovery. You know, I had Gary Reinl on the podcast. Gosh, he was one of my first podcast episodes, and he's written a couple books about stop icing, like iced, and he's a bit of a zealot, and once you get him going, you push play, and he just goes, and it's fantastic. But what I learned from Gary in reading his book, and then with Kelly Starrett, and the description I like the best in Gary's book is how when you injure yourself or surgery or whatever it is, it's like a car accident. Would you ever at a car accident, would you ever call in a massive like freeze machine and freeze everything so nothing could move?
Right.
Like, would you ever do that? It doesn't make any sense. No, you wouldn't do that. You'd grease it all up so that everything could move, and you'd treat everybody, and you'd send them to the hospital, and you'd get the cars taken care of, and you'd get things to move. So these devices are ways to stimulate your lymph system and your circulation so that your body is better at bringing those fluids into those areas that need recovery. It makes, I mean, logically, it makes sense to me. I could never really figure out why I was icing for 25 years when I was icing. Like, nobody could ever really kind of give me an explanation that I would inside by. I would just do it because that's what everybody said to do.
Well, the analgesic effect, so the pain numbing effect, is probably its greatest, benefit.
Right.
But
Gary says that
right.
if you have a traumatic injury and you're out in the middle of the woods and you need to numb yourself to get home, do it.
Right. I paid attention to Gary's work, introduced by Kelly, maybe 7 years ago, and that was a big revelation, and I was really grateful for that information. And then shortly thereafter, I actually developed an allergy to ice, which is this bizarre condition called cold urticaria, where if I'm exposed to cold temperatures, I'll actually have a histamine reaction. I'll literally have an allergic reaction to cold exposure. So if there's a vent that's blowing air on my face, I can get like a blown up nose.
Wow.
Or I had a smoothie the other day and my lips blew up like I was trying to do duck lips on Instagram. So this is a really sucky condition.
Yeah,
and
right. So you're not going to ski or snowboard anytime soon.
I was just talking about that with my physical therapist last night. He's going to Utah to snowboard. And I was like, oh God, like, when am I going to be able to ski again? This is what I'm hoping is that I mentioned that I don't have pain, that my hip wasn't this pain thing all the time, which is why I didn't have it checked out. But I do think that, the inflammation that was in there was creating other chronic responses in my body. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of those chronic responses was some alteration of my histamine reactivity balance, and that this cold allergy might be related to the inflammatory process coming from this arthritic hip. And I'm hoping that over the next couple of years, as all my systems rebalance, that I'm hoping that the cold allergy disappears, fades away, and I can go back to the mountains and get cold again with my kids. That would
be really, really cool. Yeah, it's really amazing how the physical body, the connections between physical and neurological and emotional, and how taking care of one thing physically can have multiple domino effects down the road that you might not even, if you're not aware, you might not have any idea why that even happened. Why'd that allergy go away? Where did it come from, and why did it go away? I didn't do anything. I didn't take any allergy medicine.
It's like when I stopped being a vegetarian in my late 20s, early 30s, and stopped drinking soy milk, and all of a sudden 4 symptoms that I had no idea were related to soy just disappeared and never come back into my life. It's like you don't necessarily realize the systemic reactivity that you're having is multi-layered. Exactly. The different systems of your body protecting itself from the allergen. So sometimes you're allergic to yourself, right? The inflammatory process of
God, that sucks. How do I get away from me? I can't. Shit.
I'm like a giant bee, just stinging myself again and again.
Oh God, slowly swelling. It's not gonna stop.
But as long as my lips look good on Instagram,
right? That's what's important. Well, is that why you're sucking on that cold drink there? You want your lips to swell up?
No.
Just kidding. I'm kidding. So, I don't really know much about your background. And when you mentioned your switch from vegetarianism or veganism to not. Tell us a little bit about how you got started on this road, like maybe a Reader's Digest version, because we might be here for a few hours if you went into all the nitty gritty. And maybe I'll find a couple things to ask you about.
Yeah, well, I've been on this, I've been in a whole lifestyle path since I was a tween, since I was 11 or 12, but I did it in a really unhealthy way. So I grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico, off the grid in a solar home. But that doesn't mean that my parents were hippies and vegetarians and, that sort of thing. We were living in a solar home because it was really what my parents thought was the right thing to do for the economy, like to preserve natural resources. This is right after the oil embargo in the 70s. And
was your dad an engineer or
no? My father's my father's an infectious disease specialist and an epidemiologist. He's a doctor. He's in Southern California. This was my mom and stepdad. And I liken them more to kind of like pioneers and, here's my property, here's my gun, and but we gotta save our resources for, who knows what, for the end of days potentially. And so we moved to Santa Fe and they started a solar business. And at the time, this was in the late 70s, the Carter administration was in, and you would get tax subsidies if you did solar things to your home. And then unfortunately all that reversed during the Reagan years, and those tax subsidies were cut. But my family, my mom and stepdad, so we lived in this solar home. And so the reason for telling you that is we didn't really have good TV reception. And so we would watch videos. And my mom brought home the Jane Fonda workout and the Raquel Walsh yoga video. And we started doing those videos together when I was 11 or 12. And I became compulsive with it. Because prior to that, I was the fat kid. I read a lot. I had really thick glasses. I was sort of the classic chubby kid. But I became completely obsessed with these videos. But I took it to an extreme level, and I ended up becoming anorexic, and I ended up becoming like an exercise fanatic. And that followed me for almost a decade. And so really what I had was an eating disorder and a body dysmorphia disorder. And I used exercise to soothe myself, and ended up becoming extremely skilled at different movement styles. But I didn't know that I was using it to really hide or run from my emotional pain. I ended up studying massage too. I studied massage while I was in college. I studied shiatsu massage. And it was in college that I ended up meeting my mentor, who is a yoga and bodywork specialist named Glenn Black. And
where was college?
So I went to Northwestern in Chicago. Yeah. I was a really smart kid.
How did what was your path like? Because you said you've been doing this since you were a tween. What were you doing in between then and college to kind of, obviously you were working out and obviously you developed some dysfunction. Was there any function? Was there any, what kept you going and what kept you on this path? And why Northwestern? Like what was that? That's not a typical place for
exercise. Right.
I actually almost went to Northwestern too. I played the trumpet, and it was one of the two schools I got into. The trumpet, I interviewed the trumpet teachers, or they interviewed me. Yeah. Chikowitz was at Northwestern, and Charlie Geyer was at Eastman, and I got into both schools, and I picked Eastman over over Northwestern.
Unbelievable.
Anyway,
I mean, you
story.
were one of very few people if Northwestern selected you to play trumpet.
Yeah, there were 4. They both schools had 4 trumpet players. So
unbelievable. Such a competitive program. So yes, I developed a lot of function because I became a really good study. I loved form and alignment and anatomy and learning about the body. And so I developed a really strong skill set in yoga asana, right? So the yoga poses.
In high school.
Yes. And that was through different yoga books, through Yoga Journal magazine, and which, by the way, years later, I became the anatomy columnist for Yoga Journal. So that was a really cool full circle moment for me.
Absolutely.
After I've done decades of healing from my disordered attitude. And yeah, because I was such a perfectionist, I got really good at all the stuff I was doing. And like I said, it was my blanket. While other kids might have gone into drugs or lying to their parents or stealing, I was into exercise. Like that was my clutch, my crutch, my blanket. And it altered me physiologically. It gave me sense of moving away from the stress that I had in my life. And the stress I had in my life was from multiple divorces in my family, through some pretty hardcore traumas that I was not facing or couldn't face, didn't know how to face. And so I used my exercise to protect me. And then I was running. I really loved running, but I would keep getting shin splints. Could never figure that out. Now I know why. So I'd have to back off of running. Then I got into the aerobics craze and was doing all the aerobics. And then I went to school to study performance. I was deciding between Tufts University and Northwestern because I was a really smart kid. I loved science and I loved microbiology, and I wanted to be a microbiologist. And so I was torn between Northwestern and Tufts. Tufts had the #1 molecular biology department at the time, but Northwestern had the #1 performance department at the time.
You and I are so freaking similar. You know what I majored in college? I double majored, trumpet and biochemistry. Both changed. I ended up with a geology degree and I didn't get a trumpet degree at all. Wow. So both changed, but that's amazing. Those two things, how similar those two things are.
What's crazy is I had out AP'd my science requirement at Northwestern, but the one science class I took was geology.
God dang, it's crazy.
Well, when you grow up around rocks, you really like rocks, Santa Fe and the rocks. So I went to Northwestern because I decided I wanted to be in front of people for the rest of my life and not behind a microscope.
Right.
But what's great about my career is that I get to do all the biological research I want to, and then I get to actually try it out in a larger lab with humans. And so that's a pretty sweet little package there. Although I still wish I had more lab experience. And I've gone into the lab as an adult with my anatomy mentor to do cadaver labs, but there's the part of me that's like, I would love to have more science in my life, to have more science research and to have had those opportunities to study alongside, brilliant scientists instead of just performance.
Right. And performance in what? Were you dancing? Were you, what kind of?
So dance, spoken word, writing, stagecraft, all of the
on stage, Broadway kind of thing, acting.
Performance. So the Greeks, Shakespeare, the whole thing. So I think all of that gave me a really good knack for the written word. And my first book, The Role Model, was 130,000 words. Whoa. It's a lot of words because I didn't know that I was a writer, but I think the process of studying performance and the exposure to so much literature, helped me in that respect and kind of got the bookworm part of me some satisfaction.
Right.
But the moving body and, human drive, I think that's really what motivated me in school. But I was also very ill during school. I was at the peak of my eating disorder. I came down with, not came down, but bulimia is what ended up becoming the really big cross to bear. And so I struggled with bulimia for 4 years in college, while within, in the context of my movement and dance practice. And
did people
bulimia was definitely rampant in the dance department.
Yeah. Did people know? Yeah. Like, was it a known, or did they know and not say anything? Was it talked about? What was it like?
Well, my parents handled it one way and my friends handled it another way.
Right.
And my dad did not, he just thought it was a phase. So he didn't really see the crisis that I was in, or he was avoiding the crisis. And that's sort of part of my childhood trauma. It's like, oh, well, Jill's sick, whatever, so I was kind of left to my own devices to figure this out. And, this is what I've done a lot of therapy on over the last many years, Andy, or different bouts of time where you sort of have to cycle back into the therapeutic experience to really figure out, well, why were you trying to dissolve? What were you running from? Why did you hate yourself so much? And why did you have no faith in your power? So that was a time when I really, I didn't know who I was. I was terrified of the world, and the feelings I had were so big, and the hunger I had for the expression of that rage was so overwhelming. I just kept bottling it up, but acting would let me leak it out.
Right.
And so that was it was a really therapeutic choice for me, I think.
How did your friends, so you talked about how your dad handled it, which might have contributed to making it perhaps, worse or not, obviously you've come to a place where I'm thinking you've probably accepted responsibility and gone through all of that. Right.
Absolutely.
So, but how did your friends handle it, and how was that for you at school?
So I had one friend, my best friend, who in tandem with me, she was becoming anorexic and she was becoming skeletal, and she got admitted to the hospital, and, I think she went down to 50 something pounds. It was just terrible. And I was still acting out. That's what you call it, is acting out. I was still throwing up. Mm-hmm. And I remember the call when I reached out to her at some point, and she just point blank said, "I cannot be your friend anymore. You're sick and you need help." And that was her therapy team directing her to remove herself from toxic stimuli. And to recognize that you were a toxic stimuli for your best friend, it still just breaks my heart to this day to see those two little girls, those two, 19-year-old or 20-year-old girls have to do that to one another. It was the healthiest choice she could have ever made for herself and for me, because it definitely spurred me to really take seriously what was happening. Anorexia and bulimia are the two deadliest psychiatric disorders for young women, age 16 to 20. It's the highest mortality rate. And when I think about that, when I look back on that time and think, well, it could have been dead. She could have been dead. She took a leap. Thank God she committed to her clinicians, to her team, and she told me those, set that boundary with me.
Right.
And then I was actually able to heal. It wasn't, just that. There were other factors. I was able to heal, and part of healing is to be abstinent. The challenge with food and exercise, and hopefully your listeners can relate to this, is that you still have a body and you need to move. And you still have a body and you need to eat. Unlike alcohol, unlike drugs, unlike sex. You can have a body and not have sex like the rest of your life. I'm not saying don't do that, but the different
you can survive without it. It's possible.
Right. It's not necessarily a nutritive thing. Like,
right.
There are, well, we'll have another podcast about that another time.
Well, it's really interesting that you say that, because I've thought about that quite a lot. Is, food is the one thing that there are AA programs for just about everything. And the only one that you can't just stop doing that I can think of is food.
Right.
The other ones you can. It's possible. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that that's, but food, you can't stop eating. Well, you could for a little while.
Right.
But yeah, it's different.
Yeah. Yeah. So Overeaters Anonymous, that was definitely a place I went for a little while. I personally wasn't able to get with that program. Mm-hmm. I think it's an amazing program, but I'm a hard student, Andy. Boy, really. I mean, that's sort of classic addict too. Like, oh, well, it's not going to work for me. Right. But it didn't. Although a lot of the precepts did.
Well, because something obviously worked. Like you didn't stop when something didn't work. I mean, that's really a testament to your resilience and your persistence. And you just kept looking, right? I'm filling in some blanks. That I don't know,
the blanks
but I'm guessing.
are, it's like, I don't recommend people heal the way I did because talk therapy also didn't heal me. What healed me were a combination of, I think, 3 things. 1, I fell in love. And that boyfriend's love of me helped me to love myself. He helped me to see my value and my worth. And it was a short-lived relationship, but it was just what I needed to turn the key.
This was right after college, or?
It was during college. Yeah, so this was like during junior year, because that's when I stopped throwing up, was the summer between junior and senior year. The summer between junior and senior year, I also went to work at a holistic studies retreat center in upstate New York called the Omega Institute for Holistic Studies. And you'll like this because you're an outside type of guy. I lived in a tent for an entire summer on the ground. And I did work exchange at this place called the Omega Institute, where I basically worked for free, and in exchange got to take classes, got to be part of the staff, was fed unbelievably delicious organic food 3 meals a day, lived in community. So I was constantly surrounded by other people, and was there that I met my mentor, Glenn Black, who taught me his methods of yoga, movement, meditation, and body work. And so I think living on the ground was a big thing for me. It really healed me. So I know that there's this whole movement called grounding now, or earthing. It's like, it worked. It's part of what healed my life and helped me to begin a path of repair instead of continuing to destroy myself.
A whole
and then I went back for years. I went back 4 years in a row to repeat that experience.
And you kept studying with him and kept growing. So college.
I became a teacher. That's where I became a teacher.
Gotcha.
They ended up having me substitute teach the dance classes and the yoga classes there that were meant for the participants. So the participants were there. They were paying, a retreat fee to take courses with some of the top people in the wellness space and the spirituality space, clinical, alternative clinical space, music, fascinating, amazing retreat center.
I don't want to let this question go because there were so many. By the way, my mind has been flooded with questions since this whole. I had no idea we were going here, but we have a lot of listeners. We have a lot of parents. We have a lot of moms. Maybe perhaps a lot of dads. What would you tell them, given your experience from college? To what do you have advice for them? What might you say to them about what to do if they have a kid struggling with bulimia or anorexia, or what should they do, and what should maybe the kid do? Maybe there's a young person listening who struggles.
Well, I think for the parents, the one question that my parents never asked me that I think would have helped to facilitate some truth and honesty from me to them is just the basic, what's wrong? What's wrong? And to offer support. I love you. I'm here to help you. Your life, your health, your heart is the most important thing in the world, to me, to us. What's wrong? That would have really helped, because nobody ever talked to my heart. They just attacked the symptoms. Oh, well, what you're doing is wrong. Stop doing that. Oh, okay. I get it. I can't stop. I can't stop obsessing about food. I can't stop myself from throwing up. I can't stop hearing these voices inside of my head that hate me and that hate you. It's pretty vile in there. It's really violent. It's really horrible. So understanding and being able to open up a dialogue and not take it personally. I think my parents took it really personally, and they didn't want to feel like I was blaming them. I wasn't blaming them. I was just suffering, and nobody was really acknowledging that, except for me. Like, I knew I was suffering, but I didn't know how to stop it, and I didn't know. And any therapist I had, I didn't really fully trust them, which is like my own baggage. But they couldn't wrestle me. They couldn't wrestle that part of me well enough. And I probably should have been hospitalized to have multiple people on me, you know? And I'm glad I wasn't, because like, here's my path, and blah, blah, blah. But, so what would I tell kids is they need to get those voices that are in their head out. And they need to get that out by talking to somebody or by writing, but not keeping silent about the violence that they're doing to themselves, because this could end in organ failure. It could end in death. And you are, and anybody out there who has an eating disorder, because this pervades the populace, through a lifespan, although it's, mostly hooked into the young teen and 20 something.
Right.
I've been written, because I've been out there with my story, and it's in the role model, my book, I've been written to by women in their 40s. I've been written to by women who want to conceive a child and they are still bulimic and they want to know how to stop. And this is a crisis of, a tremendous amount of disempowerment, I hate to use the word self-love, but it's really a lack of self-like. It's a lack of self-like. When you're actively in an eating disorder, you don't have a lot of respect for yourself.
Yeah.
And you don't know how to follow up with your own integrity. So the integrity would be that you'd say, okay, well, I'm not going to eat that pint of ice cream. And then later that night, you go to the store, you buy the ice cream with maybe a credit card that you stole from your husband. Like, you're like, I've got the money is out of my purse. I can't even do that. And so then you end up crossing boundary after boundary and violating those laws of integrity you set up for yourself.
And then hating yourself for it, right? I mean,
and then the shame that happens afterwards.
Right.
And the cycle. I'm like covered with chills even talking about this. And that the cycle repeats itself again and again, and you can't seem to find those ways of respecting yourself. And that really takes a lot of work. One of the things I thought about, like, I love my mom. She's a total character. She's here right now. She's visiting us. She's such a character. And she's a tough love kind of lady, really tough love. But like, if she lived next door to me, I would ask her, I would borrow sugar from her. I'd borrow eggs from her. But when I was actively in my own eating disorder, I would have never asked to borrow sugar or eggs from me. Like, I'm like, I don't like that person. I wouldn't want any eggs or sugar from that person. It's like, wow, I just want to be a person that somebody would think about, like, oh, let me borrow some eggs or sugar from her, instead of just having a reaction like, ooh, ah.
Right.
It would be too much, like asking that person for something. So I just had to start with really small degrees of how can I build a self-liking thing with myself. And I'm telling you, like, having the reflection, I think I was very lucky that, I got this reflection from that boyfriend at the time, because he wasn't trying to stop me from throwing up. He just saw something in me. He saw the light, right? He saw the light inside of me. And I was finally able to see good in myself and see that I was likable. And
that what you were doing was not who you are.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. And that you're bigger than your disease. And depending on what your spiritual beliefs are, I mean, some people really find help by going to the universal God or whatever redemptive force is there for them. Maybe it's nature, maybe it's the universe, maybe it's I'm not a religious prescriptive, but it's to have some type of redemptive, benevolent, loving force. And so for me, it was that boyfriend at the time. And then I was able to convert that expression, the sort of the physiological expression of, feeling a sense of adoration, warmth. I was able to convert that to a larger and larger rings of being around me, and then be able to, be better engaged with friends and teachers and community and family. Like then being able to learn to talk to my family in ways that they could finally hear me. They weren't as afraid of me because I wasn't as afraid of myself.
Right. I went through a 2-year program at University of Santa Monica. Spiritual psychology.
Yeah. Do you know my friend Kirsten Hara?
I know some Kirstens, but I don't remember that last name.
You look so familiar to me, Andy. I think because I used to live in Santa Monica.
Oh, really?
She was at USM. Anyway, I'm sure we have a lot of.
We probably do.
I think we do.
But we learned a technique very early in the training called heart-centered listening.
Mm-hmm.
And no one ever tells you, or nobody ever tells you that listening doesn't just happen with your ears and your brain. Like listening happens in here, in your heart. And when you can listen with your heart, it changes everything. Yeah. It's not just a technique. I mean, it is, because it's something we practiced, but, there was another one we learned called seeing the loving essence, and sometimes people just need to be seen and need to be heard, yeah, it sounds like your boyfriend did that for you, or at least triggered something in you that allowed you to see it in yourself.
Exactly. And that sums it up exactly. And I was able to listen with my heart, and then I was able to trust my gut, Andy.
Right.
And I was able to listen to my physiology, and it became my friend instead of my foe. And in the meantime, one of the ways I was trying to listen to my tissues was through massage. And so it's interesting that you're talking about this, because I started doing abdominal massage this was the number 3 thing that helped heal me, was abdominal massage. And that was suggested to me by a yoga teacher in Chicago, because I told this yoga teacher that I was bulimic. And she said, oh, well, here, lay on this bean bag. At the time, there was this prop in the yoga space, in the Iyengar yoga space, and it looked like a hamburger bun stuffed with sand. I mean, exactly the same shape. And so she said, lay down on it and breathe into it on your belly. So you lay face down, put the beanbag in my abdomen. And
when you say on your abdomen, do you mean like your belly button, or where in your abdomen?
Anywhere. Yeah. On the abdomen, basically in the midline. Yeah. Okay. So you could stay on your navel. And when I laid down on it, this was like age 19. So this is 26 years ago. It was my first experience with that. And it was the most uncomfortable, unpleasant, horrible experience of feeling not just the physical pain from the spasticity I had been creating in my gut and my abdominal layers, but also the emotions.
Did you say spasticity?
Yes.
Is that a word?
Spasticity?
I love it. It's like the word of the day.
I say it
For me,
that's the
word. That's the word of the day. I love that word. Spasticity.
Right. Well, it's when you're doing this, when you're throwing up, your organs they're exhausted. There's really only one reason to be throwing up, and that's poison food. But I had made food my poison. So the abdominal massage, and I was studying shiatsu at the time, and in shiatsu, this particular form I was studying, the palm of the hand of the massage of the therapist is always on the abdomen. It's called mother hand technique. So one hand is on the abdomen to sense what's called the hara, which is the center of being. And then the other hand is doing moves around the body. It's a really fascinating practice developed by a guy named Ohashi. And so I studied this Ohashi shiatsu format. And so I was getting live hand work on my belly, and then I was able to do this abdominal massage. I innovated on the beanbag because it was too much pressure, and I used a roll-up towel. And then years later, I used rubber balls and inflatable rubber balls, and now I have a product called the Gorgeous Ball.
It's funny because now when I think about it right now, the size of a hamburger bun on my stomach, I can't even imagine feeling something. But I obviously was not, maybe I would, because I've never tried that before. But I'm obviously not in the same, my innards are not in the same condition that yours were in.
Well, I think that for a hollow space like the gut area, you actually want to have a hollow implement. So I think that the squishy, hollow, air-filled type of ball is a much gentler way of connecting to the same structures. And
like a tennis ball or more gentle?
No. Nothing hard on your
abdomen. That doesn't seem hard to me.
No.
I'm thinking like lacrosse ball versus tennis ball. Tennis ball's soft. But you're talking about soft like what? Like
the products I make. So I make
I've never seen it.
Specifically for the abdomen.
Got it.
And in the last Whole Life Challenge, I had a few videos to help people with their breath mechanics, their torso mechanics, their postural relationship, and the feedback that the ball creates to let you know, to familiarize you with the textures and tensions of your tissues. So those textures and the tensions within the tissues, tissues should be soft, compliant, and feel pleasant pressure when you touch them.
Right.
And that goes for the abdomen too. And if it doesn't, then there's probably some imbalance in there, whether it's a myofascial or a muscular imbalance, or whether there are adhesions within your gut region or hypertonicity within certain structures in there. It's going to give you feedback that something's not quite in balance. And so these tools, the role model tools that I create, are part of the benefit is to give you that feedback, and they're helping to massage those areas and ameliorate those tensions in the meantime.
Right. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And so it gives you a way of listening to yourself. And so that's how I took my own healing and actually, eventually bottled it for my students. And this is decades later that I even came up with the idea of, this was this little thing I used to do in my dorm room. But actually, this is very beneficial, not just to people suffering from bulimia or anorexia, but to the biomechanic of a powerlifter who is trying to compete in a tournament.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love the way that mobility, for me, I started learning it from Kelly Starrett when I first got introduced to Kelly back in, 2005. Mm-hmm. And how it's moved from being something that you had to go get to something that a lot of times you can do for yourself. You can't do everything for yourself, but I love how much that has shifted so that we're able to actually take care of ourselves in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes on our own, without having to leave the safety of your home.
Yeah, you can get to almost every nook and cranny of your body and be your own self-care practitioner.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Kelly has been a tremendous voice in the world for this. And we met about 7 years ago. And the first thing I introduced him to was this gut massage, which he renamed the Gut Smash.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah. So any of my little pretty butterfly names. So they all got
smash this, chew that, supple leopard this.
Universe.
Yes. Exactly. So
which
Kelly,
is great.
That's the yang of Kelly Starrett.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. Well. Were those your so then okay? How did Jill Miller the entity that is you are today? How did that develop from the time you left school? You were a teacher. You were a yogi. How did you move into building your company and that process?
All right. So I'll try to give you the short version. I came up with the term yoga tune-up when I was making a Hanukkah gift for my mom. She was complaining about shoulder pain. And so I made her this little video. And while I was making the video, I said, here, Mom, here's a little yoga tune-up for your shoulder. So I literally came up with the term extemporaneously. And I was like, wow, that's a really good name for what I do, because I would teach all these movements that, first of all, I'd be teaching a yoga class and I would be just really disappointed with how people were, going through the flow. Because I was actually teaching in a formula system at the time. Mm-hmm. And there's much more to the story, but I started teaching a formula system. And when I would see people moving, I knew better. I knew that they could actually have more potential for movement. They could be more accurate, and they would have less injuries or less complaints if I could just press pause, do some mobility exercises, if we boil it down, or corrective exercises that built proprioception and proper motor control, and then return them to the flow so that they can incorporate that learning into their practice. And so I would do these little tune-ups. I'd literally stop the class. We would do these tune-ups and then we'd jump back in. And then I got calls from the management that said, you can't do that. That's not so-and-so yoga.
What kind of yoga were you doing, and where was?
Oh, I don't want to call anybody out.
Oh, okay.
But let's say it was a type of power yoga.
Okay, gotcha.
Power flow.
Were you out here in California at that time?
Yeah, I've been in Los Angeles for 20 years now. So wow. Yes, I was in Santa Monica.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Well, maybe, gosh, I used to take Brian Kest's Sunday morning 8 a.m. class at the studio above Radio Shack. I'm
sure I saw you there.
Me and my wife, actually, when we first met in 1998, that was one of our favorite things to do on Sunday mornings. We'd go and
I think by 98, I wasn't going to that studio anymore.
Oh, really?
But yeah, definitely. I moved out here in 95. So I think 95, 96, I was there every day.
And I might have been there then too, because I started doing it after my first year of adventure racing. I realized, God, you know what? It's probably not such a good thing that when I bend over, I can't reach my toes. So I probably need to lengthen something. And and I took the entire off season and stopped running, stopped cycling, stopped kayaking, and just did yoga. And I just did it at Brian Kest. I started taking the level 2-3 classes on Tuesday afternoons.
Wow, you remember that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it left a big imprint. And you know what's funny is his daughter is in my son's class at school right now. So it's a very small world. He doesn't know, he has no idea who I am. I mean, how many thousands of people has he yoga-ized over the years? So
I'll tell you a very short story about Brian. I was in his very first teacher training class.
Wow. That's amazing.
But I did not finish.
Huh.
I did not finish.
There's a story there.
Oh yeah, there's a story there. That's okay. There's stories everywhere.
You want to tell the story or not tell the story?
No, it's okay.
All right.
No. I got intrigued by Ashtanga.
Uh-huh.
And I'm grateful to him for he introduced me to the Ashtanga series.
Who was the teacher that was at Yoga Works up on Montana that was the Ashtanga teacher? She was a little Mati. It was I took Mati's class a few times.
Yep.
I didn't really glom on to Ashtanga. It was too much. There was too much responsibility on me to have to do stuff. Yeah. So I'd rather just go and be told what to do, and Brian was good at that.
Yeah, so. No, I'm super disciplined. I like to do my own thing. So the Ashtanga series really worked for me, although it's telling you what to do. Like you have to do this pose next, this pose next, this pose next.
Right.
But what happened, and this is really how Jill got to be where she is Ashtanga.
Jill is you, right?
Yeah, that's
me. You changed persons.
Yes, I did. Jill, I just talked myself in third person. I'm out of body right now.
Gotcha. Okay.
So Ashtanga, I was so mobile. I was so flexible. And I was that girl who the teacher could put into any shape they wanted. Mm-hmm. And also because I was a performer, I was like, I kind of enjoyed it. I enjoyed that, everybody's looking at me doing this pose. But I had overstretched myself to such a degree. I had really lost the integrity of my joint system to such a degree that I started to experience pain. And so I was 25 years old and I would wake up in the morning unable to straighten my knees. And I would walk from bed to the bathroom, sit on the toilet, walk to the kitchen like a woman old before her time. I was literally unable to straighten my knees for several minutes every day. And then I would go to the studio and do the 2-hour first series again. And in denial that the yoga was, putting myself into these same yoga shapes day after day was stressing my joint system. And that was, that really haunted me for years. And I think that my hip condition, circling way back, this total hip replacement, was exacerbated by the long held static stretching, my discipline of overdoing it in these positions and not having anything to balance out. So I wasn't cross training at the time. I wasn't lifting weights. I wasn't taking enough days off to really recover the fascial body or the overstretched body. And so the work I teach, Yoga Tune-Up, and the role model were a reaction to that overstretched and in pain person, where I would limit range, where I would focus more on the corrective work than on the asana itself, and build proprioception, build strength, build body awareness, and have a very, very strong mental dialogue or somatic dialogue about the process instead of just, going deeper and breathing. This was just something, it was something much more evaluative that I needed to attune to. And then the work, I ended up running my own martial arts studio and teaching my work.
Wow.
And
when did martial arts happen?
No. I rented a studio so that I could teach my yoga classes.
Oh, got it. I thought suddenly I thought you were a martial arts techer too. I'm like, holy cow.
No.
Gotcha.
No, the only martial form I studied was Tai Chi. Like you're not going to find me in the aggro stuff. Like don't ask me to throw a ball. Right. I mean, I can roll on a ball, but I can't throw it.
Right. Bowling, you can roll a bowling ball, right?
Maybe. I was that's so funny. I was so overstretched that when I would go bowling, it would throw out, I would my rotator cuff would get like spastic. Yep. So I really had created a lot of problems. And
there was it's just a small world thing. There was a girl that I used to hang. We never dated or anything, but she used to go to yoga. Her name was Barry, and she ended up being a runner, but she got really injured from yoga. She took Mati's class, and I totally lost touch with her. I haven't seen her in years.
The name Barry sounds familiar, but I think we might know a different Barry.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, yeah. Just thought I'd throw it out. Same time, same place, same classes, same yoga intensity. Overstretched, injuries. Stopped doing yoga because of it. So anyway.
Yeah, it's all about balance. I mean, and that's looking at the pillars that you all, bring out in the Whole Life Challenge. I was not very pillared. I was just like, yoga is it.
Well, because extreme, I think you could say that for really anything, extreme religion, extreme mobility, extreme strength, extreme power is detrimental to human conditions. I always tell people, if you're looking at a professional athlete to be your example of like health and fitness, you're looking at the wrong example. Because it's not possible to be at the level that a professional athlete is at and be quote unquote healthy. It just, the two things don't go together.
No.
I think that's one of the things CrossFit really missed on is, Coach Glassman was, I think, a genius in his example in his modeling of wellness, of sickness, wellness, and fitness. But the CrossFit Games kept moving the needle past fitness into competition, and wellness does not improve when you move into competition. Well, competition for fun, but not competition for actual competition.
Right. That level of stress can only be sustained for a small period of time.
Yeah.
Before significant breakdown occurs, and then you need to live with your Mark Pro on your body.
Or you do whatever it takes. If you're there are stories about that in every sport, in whether you're a football player or a cyclist, or you do what it takes, and sometimes that's not ethical, and sometimes it's not legal, and sometimes it's you suffer the consequences. I just read an interview with Jim Plunkett from the Raiders. And he just, is suffering from the pain that he's in from life now because of all the beating he took when he was a football player.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, the thing is that experience of having that glory and the high of performance and the high of that competition. I mean, that it's just in the same way that dancing was a huge part of my path.
Yep.
And the choreography was bonkers. Like, it was total banana fruitcakes. It was stupid stuff, but you did it because that was the art. Right. And that is the same way you could say that is the sport. That is the art of the sport. And
so you think you can dance? I love that show. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that.
Yes.
Because my wife was a big dancer too, and she actually came to LA to be a dancer with Janet Jackson. She didn't make it, but that was her. In 1991, she came here with the intention of being a Janet Jackson dancer.
Amazing.
And she's in the music business now, totally unrelated to anything. She was actually, we've swapped places. I was a musician growing up. She was what was her major? Not physiology, but exercise physiology. That was her major in college. And she's now in the music business, and I'm in the fitness and health and well-being business. It's so
yeah, well, but you guys have a lot to talk about.
We do. We have a lot to talk about. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, no, right. So the, okay. So wait, we just got it. We didn't quite make it through, to where you are today.
Oh, right. So I developed programming that would give people body awareness. So my classes weren't like sexy, and they weren't like, oh, you can do this great pose. It was very, I don't want to say intellectual, but it was a very embodied approach to movement. And, Equinox took a chance on me, and they brought me in, and I started really, it was a great place for me to develop a linguistic context that could cross across many, many departments. So I had the personal trainers were in there, the massage staff was in there, the front desk people, and then of course the consumers what I'm saying is actually a lot of employees would come to my classes because it helped them with their vocation, and it helped them with what they were doing. And I developed a much better aptitude for translational teaching. So I wasn't just stuck in the Sanskrit box that I would have been at yoga studios. And boy, was that an amazing thing. And then Equinox wanted me to develop my work so that I could train other teachers to teach it. And it was around the same time that I also met my now husband. And he came to one of my classes 6 months into dating me. He came to a 3-hour core workshop, my gut workshop.
3 hours?
Yeah, because I taught these workshops everywhere.
Wow.
I would travel and teach. I mean, there's a whole other entrepreneur story in here that is a whole other thing.
Yep.
But I would travel.
We're gonna have another podcast with you on it, because there's way too much.
I developed a lot of really sellable workshop topics. And would travel around the country. My mother worked for JetBlue, so I got to fly for free. Nobody had to take a risk on me, so I could get my ass there, show up, teach, make everybody money, and it was great. And when my husband came to a workshop,
when was this? What year? Just for some context.
This was 2007 was the first time he came to one of my workshops.
Okay.
We met in 2006, and 2007 he came to one of my workshops. And yeah, literally, 2 hours and 40 minutes. I said, okay, Shavasana. And, he was like, what? How did 3 hours go by? And I never checked the clock once. Because he was like, if he were to go to a class, like prior to meeting me, he would go to like a flow class. And he said at 30 minutes, he was just always looking at the clock, couldn't wait to get out of there. And then after class, he goes, we need to bottle this. And I was like, I am not interested in making a business around this. And I told him no, but he sold me on the vision, and he was right.
Was he an entrepreneur?
Serial entrepreneur.
Okay.
And he was wanting to do a business where he could help people, because prior to that he'd been doing different marketing things, internet stuff. I mean, he just did stuff that was great entrepreneurial stuff, but he wanted to really help people change the course of their lives. And he saw that I could do that with this work, and that people were very empowered. And then he convinced me, and we built a business around it. We have 500 teachers worldwide that teach our work, both Yoga Tune-Up and the Role Model, through our Tune-Up Fitness umbrella. And we have products and trainings that span the planet.
Wow.
In the self-care fitness model.
How did you go from I'm not interested to I'm not only interested, but I'm like leading the charge? Like, was that a hard thing?
You know, by the time I came around to it, around to the idea, there were some other people who were encouraging me. And once I modeled out my teacher training and started teaching the teacher trainings, I just got so much out of teaching other teachers and knowing that they were going to go out and empower other people. Mm-hmm. So that is an unspeakable feeling of I'm on my path.
Right. You just knew.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. And that was my biggest virtue. And I'd found a partner who saw that I wasn't living up to my full potential. Mm-hmm. And he really helped to push the tide and set up an infrastructure, because I definitely don't have those type of skills in the management sort of way. And he's able to set up a tremendous infrastructure and do the back end of the business. And I can be the creator that I want to be and mentor our teachers and be able to dialogue with, industry leaders like yourself and work in cultivating the relationships with other with other communities of like-minded movers, and from the clinical space to the group fitness space, the coaching space, the athlete space, the pain space, the fascia space. I get to have so many different pots to fill the well from, and then incorporate best practices and continue to keep evolving the product that we put out. And, and like the Whole Life Challenge, the mobility videos that I did for you guys, for me, everything is, I like to share what my most current passions are and what I find to be the most efficacious things. It's like the stuff I've created for you has never been in that manner done before. And I'm doing another series for you all in January.
Yeah, no, I can't wait.
And that series will be very...
this podcast is coming out and people will already be doing it. So... Oh,
that's great. So this will be, what you all are doing in this round of 6 is very informed by my rehab for my total hip replacement. And the fact that I'm able to do videos just weeks after having a total hip replacement, I think speaks volumes to the work that I do. Like, God, the role model.
Did we talk about your hip replacement? It feels like that was 2 days ago. We've talked about so many things. Like, holy cow, this has been a great conversation. I forgot about that part of it.
Andy, it's still today.
I know. Like, God, it's time to go home. We're going. My wife puts music in movies, and we're going to the Pitch Perfect premiere tonight. Pitch Perfect 3. Oh
my God! Well, I went to school with Jason Moore.
Are you serious?
Yes, we are the same year. So yeah, he was a director of mine in some project at school. I can't even remember. But
my wife is going to fall over. That is crazy. Wait,
so she did music
she did the music for 1, 2, and 3. All the music. That's hers. It's all her. Yes.
This is how small the world is. That's why I went to Northwestern, right? So funny.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
That sounds like so much fun.
It's fun. It's, I see both sides of I see the fun part, and I also see the...
No, I mean the movie premiere.
Oh, the movie premiere is going to be great.
Not the back end.
It's at the Dolby. So it's like 5,000 people. I don't think I've ever seen a movie at the Dolby Theater before. So
wow.
Should be cool. So yeah, I can't end my day at 9:45. I have too many other things to do today. Very, very important things. Yeah.
I love that. That's so much fun. Have a glass of champagne.
Are you still in touch with Jason?
No, I bumped into him. I was having lunch on the boulevard or dinner at Lemonade with my daughter. Uh-huh. And, he gave her his keys to play with. Like, wow. We're not in, we're on Facebook, but I'm not in touch. I'm very out of the performance space. Like, I do performance, I suppose, but it's very specific to my industry. Yep. But in terms of the arts and entertainment industry,
it's really different. They don't mesh very well.
They don't. It's weird.
My wife likes everything that I do, she's not antagonistic to what I do, but she doesn't, it doesn't occupy the same hierarchy of importance that it does for me. Like, it's just part of my life, and it's part of the life of the people that I work with and has been for a long time. And, she likes it and it's good, but yeah, and she would agree. I mean, she tries to make as much time as she can, given the pressures of her life and given what her chosen profession. And sometimes that's not, in my opinion, not enough. But it's enough for her. So, we go with that.
That's so interesting. That's some table flipping right there.
I was going to ask you, are there any, what sorts of, so today, let's like move to the present. What sorts of problems are facing you today? Where are you headed? What are you doing? What sorts of risks do you see yourself taking, or things you're dealing with today? Maybe it involves, being a new mom, or, in other areas that are not necessarily business related.
Well, everything seems to be tied into the challenges of being a new mom, right? And having enough time for my children and for myself and for my business. So the challenge of quote unquote time management is just a laughable joke. So my biggest challenge is being at peace with competing interests, and to not punish myself for not finishing things in the timelines that I set for myself,
right?
Or, the amount of pressure we put on ourselves. I'm saying for all moms. I mean, I think moms, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and I want to be able to do all the things for my daughter and the art projects and the thing. And I got lists. I'm like, oh, I want to do all that. It's Hanukkah. Like every night we should do this other thing and this charity thing and like this thing and this thing. And I'm like, wait a minute. Oh no, it starts tonight. I didn't line that stuff. I have a list, but I haven't taken any action steps to completing anything. And then I'm like, wait a minute, you just had your hip replaced. Stop being so hard on yourself. So
you sound exactly like me. Like, hey, squirrel, look at this. I'm like, I can't, I get so many ideas, and they're all pretty good ideas, and they're running around in my head and they're floating around. And some of them I capture, some of them I write down, but they all involve many, many steps. And like, if I've been told many times by my team, stop. We don't need any more good ideas. Stop with the ideas. We're good with ideas. We have to execute the ideas we have. Like, Jesus Christ, it's a never-ending stream. It sounds like you have a similar thing.
Well, the big sort of burden, not the the thing I'm shouldering, is that I'm writing my second book. So my first book, my publisher is Victory Belt, and who also published Kelly's book, Becoming a Simple Leopard. In fact, Kelly wrote the foreword to this book. And my second book is, it's probably due tomorrow. Like, I have no idea. It's taking me so long to write it. And so every moment that I'm squandering, listen to this. Every moment that I squander, I'm like, oh, I should have been writing my book. So that's really the big albatross of pressure. And of course the book is about resilience.
Cool. Great.
Which doesn't mean that I'm a perfect example. It means, oh, here's what I'm trying to learn too.
Of course. Right.
But it's really about, my inside out approach to core training, which has a lot to do with the resiliency function of the body, the physiology of resiliency. So that's really the big thing. And then part of the lessons within that book is about, relating and about family and about fun. And I just hate that I even have to list fun as a thing I need to do.
Right. Because
I'll tell you what's not fun. After you have surgery, there's a lot of not fun that happens inside your mind. Yep. And it's very heavy and very dark. I mean, there's been a lot of dark days for me emotionally. And then when you're with your kids, you want to bring the light side of you, obviously, and give them the most love and nurturance as you can. So there's been a lot of, I would say, energetic challenges in that way. So because I'm still in the rehab, like, give me another day. Like, tomorrow is 6 weeks. So I get to have all the crap and all the crap days supposedly stop at 6 weeks. So like, I have one more day to be dark and operatic.
Right.
And you're asking me what is new or what risks I'm taking. I don't want to say F you, Andy, but
it's not stopping. It's never stopped. You know, it's funny. I think you said something really important, though. The idea that you need to, I don't remember, what did you say?
Competing emotions?
Well, because competing emotions, but also that you have to focus on having fun. You have to actually put that down as an agenda item to have fun. And I mean, on one hand, it's ridiculous. On the other hand, I really relate to that because I'm so focused on what I'm doing. I'm so, I'm a get things done guy. I own a business. I mean, and I think a lot of people in the world relate to that. And fun doesn't necessarily fit into the equation, and it sounds silly to say it, but man, oh man, having fun is such an important, I was doing a project, 15 years ago now. I was at the Santa Monica Zen Center and I was working, they have something that's kind of like called your, it's called like, getting your not your communion, what's it called in the Catholic Church?
Community?
No, your confirmation in the church. In the Zen practice, it's called something else, and I can't remember what it's called. But I had a group I was working with. There were 4 of us, and we were working in this group, and we were going through. It was like it was like an 8-week thing, and we got near the end, and our teacher that we were seeing said, "I'm not gonna clear the way for you guys to get through. You're missing something." And we're like, what could we be missing? We've checked all the boxes. We've done all the work. Like, we're working our asses off here. We can't do more. It's impossible. And she's like, you've got to figure out the word that I'm thinking of. And it was fun. And it was like, when it hit us, it was so like, oh my God, how did we miss that? Mm-hmm. And yet we did,
Right.
And
this is not another box to check.
No.
This is a way of being, right?
Right.
And that way of being can get expunged easily from, fun can get expunged from the panic of doing and living from the I'm not enough space. Exactly. And, so this is sort of a chronic cloud that's followed me from, childhood is, okay, but if I just do this more, then it's better. And then if I just sweet, here's my dust, and I have to have a neat space too. And it's got to all be purged. I have to, all organized. And, you're just like, there's no way I can't keep up. And I just need to turn and look at my kid and let her lead me to playtime and just let go of the need for perfection and the need to control everything.
Yep.
And I definitely heard me say, I commit to that every single day, Andy. Every day I commit to doing that. I don't want it to be like, oh, I commit to that every day.
Because then it turns into not fun.
Exactly.
I mean, the minute you do that, it turns into not fun.
It's another thing.
Like I can find that I can put it on a reminder list, but I can't put it on my to-do list. Reminder, have fun today. It's more like have a fun attitude or have an attitude of fun and because the last thing you could, it sounds ridiculous. Put fun on your to-do list? Really?
Maybe you'll rename the podcast The Struggle with Fun.
Struggle with Fun. I like that.
No, don't put that. Don't put that. No one will.
That's right. Don't struggle. Have fun.
Yeah, right. Don't worry. Be happy.
I can think of literally 10 more things that we could spend another 6 hours talking about, but you probably have some things to do. I definitely have some things to do. It's funny. I use this Zoom chat room for recording podcasts, and at 10 o'clock this morning is our staff meeting. So in about 3 minutes, actually, probably right now, people are knocking at the door. The electronic door. There's a thing and it'll say, "Sorry, door's locked," and they can't get in. So.
Well, Apple's going to call me because I just got a new iPhone, so they're going to call me and talk me through.
Nice. Did you get the X, the 10?
No. I'm a what's it called? I'm a late adopter.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna go to the 8. I think I have a 6.
Cool.
I don't know what I have. But I'm halfway between.
Did you get the big one? The at least the 8, the plus, the larger size?
No, because my eyes are still good.
Oh, well, okay. There you go. My eyes are good too, but I love the plus. I got the plus. So listen, I mean, look, it's kind of redundant. How do people find you? Well, they're going to find you. They already know but where are the places they would go outside of the Whole Life Challenge world to find you, your products, your stuff, or maybe interact with you directly?
The best place to interact with me directly is on Instagram at Yoga Tune Up, or on Facebook at Tune Up Fitness, or Jill Miller.
Are you going to be known as Tune Up Fitness from now on? Is that a rebrand?
Yeah, so Tune Up Fitness has always been our company name. And then within that, we have different brands.
Oh, okay.
So we have Yoga Tune Up and we have the Role Model. But people can also go to the website. They can look at my schedule. And if they want to do some live in-person work, you don't have to be a teacher to do our trainings. Our trainings educate people at whatever level they're at. There will always be professionals in the room as well.
Where's your studio?
I don't teach at a private studio. I have a private studio at my house where I work with private students.
So your live training is you're mobile. You go around
Exactly. I go around the world.
Got it.
We also have, like I said, 500 teachers worldwide, so they can interact or take trainings with some of our other lead trainers. So wherever they're at, they can punch in their zip code or look up their country and find folks that can lead them through in-person group classes, privates, or training events. And then I'm at conferences also. I'll be in Australia this year, in Sydney, headlining at Philex. I'll be in Toronto. I'll be at IDEA in San Diego, and I'm doing some partnerships with Tom Myers this year in DC and on the East Coast, teaching Breath and Bliss, my Breath and Bliss immersion at his enclave out there in Maine.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and I'm glad we got this worked out in terms of rescheduling. And and
perfect.
Thank you
so
much. We're done, and thank you so much. It's been really, getting to know a lot more about the person behind the person. It just means a lot to me, and I appreciate your willingness, your openness, and your directness, and your willingness to kind of use your life as an example to help others. It's beautiful.
Well, I'm excited to have done this and to be able to share the new videos with the challengers, and looking forward to hopefully connecting with your hearts and your bodies.
Cool. Love it.
Great.
All right. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
The Whole Life Podcast is produced by our podcast team, Winslow Jenkins, Becca Borowski, and Ernie Hurtado. You can find all of our episodes, links, and complete show notes at wholelifechallenge.com/podcast. The way that I've found is the best way to listen to podcasts is to subscribe so that episodes automatically get delivered right to your mobile device. You can do that in any podcast app on your phone. And hey, if you like the podcast, please do me a favor. Go to iTunes and give it a 5-star rating. And recommend it to your friends. I'm Andy Petronic, and thanks so much for listening.